That was the first time I really had cried in many years. I never really got that opportunity, but I like 30 minutes straight just wailing, and it was like, "What is wrong with me?" And at the end of it, I realized, like, I don't wanna be alive. I don't wanna feel this pain, and that was tough to deal with and tell myself, like, "I don't wanna have to feel like this. I don't wanna be here." But I do wanna be alive, and I reached out to the same doctor and was like, "Hey, I wanna kill myself, like, I need help."
Welcome back to Normalizing Men's Mental Health. I have the privilege and honor of speaking to Eric Krapf. He is a man of God, father, husband, former Navy SEAL, and FMF corpsman. How you doing, Eric?
"Doing great, brother, how are you?"
Doing great, man. Like I was telling you, as I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time. You're a hell of a conversationist, and it's nice that we have some mutual friends in common.
Yeah, man, I'm grateful that we got connected.
I know the wall behind you is a very powerful wall for you, and it's a reminder of all the sacrifices that you and the people you know and some of the people that you have inspired other individuals that you know. How does it actually influence you most days, that wall?
So, really, I did that wall as part of my grieving process, and in the moment, it wasn't like, "Oh, what do I do to help myself with grief?" And then I did this. It just kinda started happening, but, some of these guys just touched my life in a way that I couldn't get over deaths, and they just kept happening to people I knew. And so, yeah, we have, behind the computer here is the stairway to go upstairs, and the whole stairway going up is pictures of our kids and family. And as we were ordering those, I'm like, "I need to get the guys up here." And, yeah, it just catapulted me into healing.
Well, we're talking about a little bit of healing, but let's actually start from the beginning of your story. So how were you as a child, man? Where did you grow up and how was that lifestyle?
Yeah, so I grew up in, North Texas, kind of a small town, about an hour north of Dallas, and before I could remember, my parents had already divorced and remarried other people, and I was living with my dad and my stepmother, and she abused me and my brother. Uh,
And
she used to beat us quite a bit, and she just really traumatized me by, force feeding me until vomiting, forced me to eat cat food, just random weird shit like that. And yeah, my dad wasn't really there because he worked night shift, and if he was there, he was, sleeping all day so he could work. So he wasn't really aware of it. And at a certain point, she beat my brother pretty bad. Sorry. She beat my brother bad enough that he got to go live with my mom. Like, I still remember having to go to court, and, that's this I say funny, but it's a funny thing about the '80s, like, she beat my brother bad enough that he got to go away, but they didn't let me go live with my mom as well. And so since my brother was gone, I was the only one left there to get the brunt of it. And she had a son and a daughter from a previous marriage, and her daughter was same age as me, but she used to just torment the heck out of me until I would retaliate. And the moment I retaliated, she would go tell on me, and then something would happen to me.
so you were damned if you do and you were damned if you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like the moral of the story for a lot of the guys that you had a privilege to serve with, where it's like you want to help individuals that have been tormented for some time and they don't usually have the voice to be able to be heard and seen, and then the people that are supposed to protect them, they're like, Oh, nope, we only protect certain people. You're not one of them.
Yeah, I guess looking back, it kind of feels that way. It's kind of weird too because I never said anything to anybody. I never I never even when I went to live with my mom. I went to live with my mom at 4 between 4 and 5 years old, and, I never mentioned any of this until I was an adult, which I don't know why. It just never happened.
Well, you Texas people, growing up in the '80s myself, I was born in '84. You Texas guys where everything is so much bigger out here, but you guys were also a lot more tougher than a lot of people. You guys were raised that way to be also suffer in silence as well over there, from my understanding.
Yeah, and it was also that time, where it was like, if you cried, it was, "I'll give you something to cry about." Men don't cry, boys shouldn't be crying. And I remember, my great-grandfather's funeral, all the women crying, and I remember looking around, and every male in the family was just straight-faced, like nobody was shedding a tear, and I think that's when I got it, like, "Oh, wow, we really aren't supposed to cry."
Man, when in your life did you give yourself the privilege to cry?
I mean, random things would cause me to cry, but not like I would always try to fight it. I finally gave myself permission when I started doing psychedelic treatments, and it's like you kind of don't have a choice. Like it lowers those walls and that veil, and you let that out.
Yeah, you definitely do let it out, and when like, a mutual friend of ours, Jared, I remember Jared talking about when I did the psychedelic retreat with him, about while we cry, we actually allow it to stream down our face, and we're able to taste our own pain and actually how it self-soothes, and as a boy, we don't hear about that. As being in the military, we don't hear about that, but do you remember the place that you when you were doing the psychedelics that you just allowed yourself to be able to flow?
Man, I had a couple of experiences where in my intentions that I set I set intentions to specifically work on the deaths of my friends, and I had the most crying come out in that time. And matter of fact, it's like, and for anyone who's listening or watching, it doesn't mean that it all goes away in one fell swoop. Like, I worked on deaths 3 times, and the 3rd time it was, pardon me, I, just cried my eyes out again and was shaking like crazy, and I'll get more into that later, but, just shaking and crying, and at a certain point, it was as if I just let out a big exhale and was just like, and just sunk into the mat, and I just was washed over with this tremendous sense of peace.
It's I know we have talked about the psychedelics a few times because of, like we said, we have similar people. Would you mind actually share why you decided to go into the Navy and what was the reason that you decided to become an FMF corpsman?
Sure, yeah, I actually joined the Navy to be a SEAL, and, somewhere around the 8th grade, I had it in my head that I wanted to do that, and I don't know that it was hard cemented in, but it was random. I reached out to my mom when I was gonna graduate, and I said, "Hey, when was the first time you remember me talking about it?" And she said she thinks it was the 8th grade. Her and my stepdad were watching a program, and I came into the living room, and I was in there long enough to hear, "This is the toughest training in the world." And I just casually was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do that." And they looked at me like, typical parents, like, "Okay." And I left the room, like, that was it. I was in there for a couple minutes. And a couple years later, it was the same scenario. They were watching something. I came in and they were like, "Oh, you still gonna do that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I left the room. And then the summer before my uh, senior year, I called my mom from the recruiting office and I was like, "Hey, I need you to come down here and sign this paperwork." And she's like, "Well, why would I do that?" And I said, "Well, if you don't, here in a few months, I'm going to be 18 and I'll just come back and do it." And so she came down and signed for me. So then I was in the delayed entry program. And at that time, this is pre 9/11, they weren't hurting for SEALs. So like if you weren't just this massive standout, then they didn't care. So it was, hey, you got to pick a job in the Navy that you can cross over to. And corpsman was one of them. And I don't know, it just struck me. And yeah, I chose it. It chose me, however you want to look at it. And that's really how I ended up there.
Man, so you joined the Navy, became a corpsman. How was it going from the hospital side of the house to be going with the FMF? You'd be joining, what would say, the men's club of the Navy.
Yeah, dude, it was night and day different. I was at my first duty station was Portsmouth Naval Hospital, and it's a training hospital. It's also they've also got a schoolhouse on the property, and so they just treat you so strict, and it's like every little thing they want to kick you out for. I almost, I mean, I got in trouble while I was there, being young. But then you go to the Marines, and it's a different kind of strict, but it's like I mean, I don't know, man. Like, it really felt like the military there. Didn't feel like it at the hospital. Yeah, I don't know. It was I loved it. I loved every minute of being there, minus standing in the rain for hours on end just for formation to be told, "Okay, go back," or something, but
Well, the Marine Corps loves their fun times with people, where they just enjoy having that extra quality time from mopping the cement when it's raining to like field daying the dryers by taking them all the way apart and cleaning everything out. But you said those were some of the best years of being while you were in the service.
yeah.
Why was being a corpsman with the Marines, why was that so important to you?
Man, I got more respect in those 3 years than I did my other 17 years combined. Like, it's not an exaggeration. It's not, anywhere close. Like, the moment I showed those guys that I cared about them, that I would take care of them, and that I could out PT them, like, they just showed me this level of respect I never felt any other time in the military, especially the teams. And not knocking the teams, but it's like everybody's an alpha, everybody's competing, and nobody gives a crap. Like, the Marines truly showed respect.
Well, we used to call you Doc, and Doc was held in such an honor, even from staff NCOs, NCOs, troops. They looked at you as the subject matter expert on that area, and even though that they might have outranked you, they still made sure that you were respected.
Yeah, for sure. And they also respected that, I stood up, like, regardless of rank. I would stand up for, everything down to, medical stuff, like a sergeant major asking a question. And I was like, I can't tell you about that. That's patient privacy. And him looking at me like, "Did he really just tell me that?" But it's like, "Hey, this stuff is serious," and I treated everybody the same, but I treated everybody professionally.
Well, I'll tell you this, corpsmen are the reasons I never fell out of the run, or I never decided to fall out of a ruck march, because I was scared to death of you guys, especially from Paris Island, of the silver bullet, and I'm like, "No, I will not fall out ever for this." And I seen how some of you guys had that look in your face, like, "Please fall out, please. I got something for you." Yeah, we
I never enjoyed doing that, but I really did take my job seriously, and, if you fell out, it had to happen. And for those that don't know, a silver bullet is our slang for, rectal temperature.
An ice thermometer.
Yeah.
So why did you go to the SEALs? What
Say
were
again?
actually why did you go to the SEALs? Why did you leave the Marines after you were really enjoying it? Why did you decide to continue on with that path?
Yeah, it was always my dream, and I just had this one-way mentality at that time that wasn't necessarily good, but it's what got me there and what got me through, and I just had a drive that I knew I needed to do this. Now, I almost went recon, just because of my impatience and immaturity, which, I was immature for a very long time. But, I got really impatient, and I reconnected with the guy I knew who was a recon corpsman, and he, pulled some strings to where I could take the screen test, and then they had a one-for-one swap for me, which, means that there's a corpsman they wanna get rid of. And so the battalion looked at it as, "Well, do we really wanna take on this person that they're trying to get rid of?" And then they told me, "Well, hey, we're about to go on deployment to Afghanistan, so you'll get to do some real stuff." And at that time, there was really only me and 2 other corpsmen that could really, really hang anywhere with any unit in the battalion, and they just, kinda talked me into it like, "Hey, we need you." And so I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll stay." And I stayed for that deployment, and then as soon as that deployment was over with, and by the end of that deployment, I was training crazy hard, got into, phenomenal shape, and they could just see that I was doing this. And so, yeah, just went that way.
So I'm gonna actually bring you back to something, and as being a healer type, being a person as a corpsman, do you mind sharing a little bit about how you worked with people of different nationals, the country, and then also even just the Marines that you worked with? And like, how does that create that moral injury, and how does that actually create that perspective of, hey, I don't need to be a trigger puller to be able to be impacted by trying to stitch somebody up or do something like that. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I think I can answer. I think I understand what you're asking me there. So one part of that with dealing with the other country. So I just worked real close with our interpreter on deployment, and I got to a point where I'm like, I constantly ask the same medical questions, right? And so I'm constantly hearing the same answers. And so finally, I asked him, when we were back at our fob, like, tell me what you're saying. And I just wrote it down phonetically and memorized a whole bunch of stuff. And I got to where I could have casual conversations or ask even just these medical questions to them. And as long as they didn't change the subject, I could piece together enough words in the sentence to understand what they were saying. And that really it was funny on a lot of occasions because they would look at me like they didn't understand me, and then the interpreter would say exactly what I said, and I wasn't saying it all Texan and stuff. Like, I would say it with the proper accent, but the interpreter would say it exactly the same way, and they would be like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "I just said it exactly like that." And he's like, "Yeah, but you're American, they just don't understand." I got a lot of that, but, I think it really helped in the interaction a lot of the time. And it got to where, I cared about people so much that I started, because we would go out different places and I would just be sitting there for hours on end. So I would tell the interpreter, like, "Hey, go tell them whoever's sick or injured to bring them to me." And I would try to, triage them. I would try to figure out what was wrong, and if I could treat them, I would. There were some that were were way beyond my capabilities, like somebody with tuberculosis. and I was just thinking like, "Oh my gosh, I hope I don't get this," And, really, there was nothing I could do for them. And I'll be honest, like, I haven't told many people this, but I gave Motrin for this. And it wasn't the old joke of like, "Well, here's some Motrin, walk it off." It was really like I was close to tears in what I was seeing, and it really hurt that I couldn't help. And they don't understand medic. Like, they think I am an actual doctor, and it's like, you know, the best thing I could do was just give some Motrin so it looks like I'm giving them something. And, it broke my heart to do, but, I did it. And man, I ended up taking care of so many people, and the word got spread so much that I probably took care of more than 1,000 people in that 7 months. And we ended up having to have two different sick calls at our fob because so many people were coming.
How would you be able to articulate it to a person that doesn't understand what medics, corpsmen, EMTs, paramedics actually see and how it creates that haunt?
Yeah, I guess we're closer to a paramedic or EMT than anything because we have this minimal amount of knowledge and schooling, but we're expected to do the maximum amount of care. And overseas, there's not a doctor. There'll be a doctor at the major bases, and at field hospitals, but like we're pushed out in the middle of nowhere on these fobs, and there's 50 to 100 people maximum on these things. So, like, we are expected to be the doctor. We're expected to fix up gunshots, blown off limbs, and things. And when I say fix them, I don't mean like going deep into surgery and taking care of them that way, but it's like, hey, you better stop the bleeding, that type of thing. You're not expected to dig out a bullet and and all that, but yeah, stopping the bleeding and preventing death is the number one goal.
Like, I know with us, we had to carry tampons with us for bullet wounds. That they taught us just the basic life-saving stuff of taking a card with 3 pieces of tape, pretty much just tourniquets, just don't tourniquet the head, and it was just like the other areas, and when people think about the military, a lot of times they get hyper fixated into just that personal conflict of squeezing a trigger versus somebody else trying to squeeze a one at you or being blown up. They I feel like a lot of people don't realize that the other complexity of what happens behind the scenes of actually when you lose somebody or when you're trying to help somebody or did I do the right call and I had a moment to actually be able to figure it out. If I remember correctly, the Iraqis in 2006 started shitting on IEDs. So if you got hit with
Mm.
a piece of shrapnel, you also get some fecal matter, which creates a whole other thing. And we needed people like you to be able to make sure that we came home or the best that we can come home. And like the guilt or the moral injury that you guys feel is something that is super hard to talk about because it's people might just chalk it up and say, "Oh, that's war," instead of realizing that you're a human.
Yeah, that got tough for me over there after a couple of incidents, and it wasn't even my guys, it was, foreigners. But it's like you get it this so ingrained to you to help and to fix and to treat people, and then something happens where, like, I'll probably choke up during this, but I had a 4-month-old girl get brought in one day. Excuse me. And it wasn't even my sick call time. I just happened to wake up early and just happened to be wandering over to sick call, and this girl was there. and the dad walked like 18 hours through the night to get to us, so I think it was an accident, but however, she was dropped in a pot of boiling water, and she had burns all over her face, chest, arms, and for those that don't know, like, adults, typically, when they crash slowly. Kids and infants crash like that, and she was fine 1 minute. And then, I mean, I even asked her father if I could take pictures. I took pictures of the majority of the medical things I saw. And he allowed me to take pictures. And then, like, within a minute or two of taking pictures, she just codes on us. And we had already called for a medevac, but we had to do CPR on this infant for, I don't know, 30 minutes before this helo got there. And it's like, I know she didn't make it, but like what that does to you inside is horrible. And it's not something that can be taught or trained out of you. Like if you have a soul, if you have a conscience, it's going to hurt. And I had my first two kids were already born. They would have been 3 and 4 at this time. So I think that was part of it. But I up until that point, I wanted to be a pediatrician at some point. And once that happened, that just took it completely away from me. Like I just was like, there's no way I could do this.
I remember you were sharing that story with me, and you also shared the story about the guy being bit by the snake
Oh,
as well. And the how long did it take for you to be able to even have the courage to speak about stories like that, of how that impacted you? And what was some of the challenges when you started first being able to vocalize those things?
I think it would have been probably more than 10 years before I talked about any of that. And that was I only have that guesstimate because I think that's around when I finally started doing some therapy. But, what was the second part of your question there?
And what was some of the challenges of being able to finally open up about parts of those stories to people?
Yeah, so I finally, saw a therapist, and it was it was very difficult for me. Like, I mean, I'm almost choking up here, and I'm the most healed that I've ever been. But I couldn't even get stories out. I would try, and I would just break down. And it's like I wasn't comfortable crying in front of people, and so I would fight that off so bad, and it would just take so much time and energy out of me trying to fight the tears that wanted to come. And so, yeah, challenging was the least word I could use to describe it. It was extremely difficult.
And then you went to the SEALs, and then you became a breacher. Um, if I remember correctly, you also wanted to become a corpsman in the special operations. How was it when you got into the SEALs? You went through buds. You got accepted by, I think it was SEAL Team 2. You said
I went to 4 first, yeah.
you got accepted by 4, and then now you're over here trying to show up for to be a corpsman. How was some of those challenges of like the way that you had to renegotiate this?
So that part sucked a lot. So that was, so first off, like, the way it works for us is if you're a corpsman and you go through buds, you are already slotted for, 18 Delta, which is the combat medic training course. Pardon me. And so I got to go there, and, so all my class that I graduated with, they went to different teams. I go to this training course, and I can look back now and see different things that happened to me or, like, attitudes that I had, and I can see now that that was just, that was like PTSD and that was other anxieties and things coming out of me. But those attitudes, like I had quite an attitude for a while, and unfortunately, it's not a brag. It's just everything happens for a reason. But my attitude when I was there, I was super irritated with this SEAL. The way that goes is all the branches, special operations are there. So, the Rangers, the SF, SEALs, SWIC, all of us have our own little liaison instructor, and I just headbutted with this SEAL instructor so much. Like he was such a piece of crap. He would try to be cool and buddies with us when nobody was around. But the moment anybody else came around, especially other instructors, he just treated us like crap. And so he and I just butted heads and ended up failing a test. And then he didn't show up to the board, and I was the only person dropped. So it was like I said, I don't. I was butthurt about that for a while. I'm way past that. I can see that it was, my own doing, and yeah, it happens. But it sucked because now I leave that schoolhouse and I go to Team Four as a brand new guy who is known for failing out of a class, and I was treated like crap. But it's like it's also a two-way street. Like you're already going to be treated differently because you're a new guy, and not like it's just kind of the way things were. You're a new guy, you're expected to just shut up. And I had a real hard time doing that. Probably should have got my butt whipped a few times. But yeah.
So you're transitioning into SEALs, you're leaving the Marines as a FMF corpsman. Before we go further into the SEALs, how was your relationship with your kids and your wife at this time?
Oh, it was terrible. So their mom, and I'm not hating on her, I'm not bashing her. I've forgiven her, not that she knows, but my own healing work. I've forgiven a lot of people. So let's see. I get to the team early '08, and I had already remarried. I got divorced a few years prior, and she moved back to Texas, and so I never got to see my kids except for Christmas break if I wasn't deployed, and it was rough because it's not like I was living in the barracks. I got most of my money taken for child support, so I really couldn't do a whole lot, and I couldn't bring them to wherever I was. They were super young, so anyways, I get remarried, and shortly after, let's see, I don't know, sometime during '08, I got to go to a part of our sniper pipeline, and at that time it was three schools. The last one is what gets you the title sniper. So I was never a sniper. I'm not claiming that, but I'm in the second of those two schools, which is scout, and they teach you to stalk, teach you to do all these things, taking pictures and all this. And I was in a different state, and I find out that um, their mom, who never really wanted to work with me on anything, she said, "Hey, this is your scheduled time to see them. If you don't get them, you're not getting them." And it's not like I had the money to take her to court, so I just had to do it. And so my new wife had to take care of them, and she already had two kids from a previous marriage as well. So she got them for us for summer visitation, and I wasn't going to be home for like a week or two before my course was done. And anyways, she she calls me one day and she's telling me about some behaviors that my children are exhibiting, And, as a father, it's not, you just don't think certain things would happen to your kids. And it turned out that they had been molested. And that wasn't the rough part about it. The rough part was that I didn't know. And so for 5 years before and after school, every day, they were going to this house. Their mom knew this, and she continued to allow them to go there. And so I'm just like punched in the gut, Like I'm sick. I don't know what to think or do. Um I still have to finish this school that I just suffered in. And then a day or two later, she calls me again and she tells me, "Hey, your daughter was talking about, one of my daughters was talking about this man." And those are the MySpace days. And we looked up this guy on MySpace, and he had his profile was public, and he had an album titled "Daddy's Little Girl," and it was all pictures of my daughter. And I'm just like, what in the hell is happening? So it turns out for the 7 years of her life, she'd been telling me that I was her dad and telling this other guy that he was her dad. And man, I'm just like, I'm crushed. Like, I don't know what to do. I still got this crappy school to finish. I just want to go kill the guy from the other issue. My world was just rocked. I didn't have anybody to talk to. And even if I did, I don't think that I was mature enough to really have those conversations with people. And so like most guys do, I just stuffed it down and it just came out in bouts of anger, bouts of sadness if I would let it out that way. Um yeah, and it was probably the toughest time for me. I had to order a DNA test. I had that at home waiting when I got back in town, and then I had to wait 2 weeks to find out the results. And the results came, and there wasn't a percentage sign or word on that paper on those papers. And I had to call them. I was like, man, this is just they just keep the hits just keep coming. It's like you just want answers and you can't get answers. But it turned out she was 99.9% mine, but that still brings up issues, right? So I'm like, okay, she's mine, but what do I do about this guy? And so I contact him. And I was really cool about it. I wasn't a dick. I was like, hey, man, I'm not sure if you've ever heard about me, but I think we need to talk. And we just called one another and had long conversations about this. And it was horrible, horrible. She, we were all younger and she hooked up with this dude 7 years prior, but she had been telling him that he was the dad and and getting money from him as well. And then there was times where, he was without a job or something and wasn't able to pay. And so she would call his mom and berate her and, demand money. And she would give her some money too. And his mom talked to me at one point, and it was just heartbreaking, unbelievably heartbreaking to hear this older lady who thought this was their one and only grandkid in the family. And I had to tell her that, sorry, she's not. And, so the hits started coming early. And yeah,
How many tours did you do by this time?
I'd only done the one. I'd done 3 deployments, but only one of those was a combat deployment. I still had another combat deployment that would come up, but that hadn't happened yet.
So part of and I wish for the people that are listening, because we have 3 people, we fluctuate between people that are watching right now as we're talking to other individuals. It's that type of stress from just even going through stalking. then also finding out about this happening with your child, the molestation, and not having people to be able to speak to. It's like a huge prison where you can't actually get out of, you can't run away from. And how was your alcohol intake during this time?
But it was heavy, heavy. You know, it's one of the things that sucks, but like people don't think about this, but in the military, the only thing legal we can do is drink, and we get pretty good at it, unfortunately. And I got good at it, but that comes with other consequences. The more you're drinking, the more of, of a butt that you are to people. The less you're able to be there in whatever relationships, friendships, as a husband, as a father, all the things. So yeah, I was there, but I wasn't. I was not there. I drank a lot.
So, what happened that caused you to be on the Trident Review Board?
Yeah. Yeah, so this one's a doozy. So I really didn't do anything. It wasn't like I did something wrong. It was more, I think it was a personality clash, if anything. But I left instructor duty and I had a shoulder tear. And shoulder surgery comes with a 6-month recovery process. So that means wasn't going to be able to train or deploy if that happened during this time. But I was coming up in the years, and I really needed to do an LPO spot, which was a leadership position that I needed to make E7. And it was time. I'd already missed a couple of chances because of a previous shoulder surgery and then getting moved to instructor tour. But so I checked into my new team, and I knew my shoulder was torn, but I hadn't really gotten the results back yet. So to me, I just kind of kept it quiet. And then it came out, and it was just like, oh crap. And it was bad. It was like there wasn't any way around it. It wasn't something that I could just push through and suck it up. Like I couldn't, like my shoulders was like this. Um, and I really couldn't function. And so I needed the surgery. So that kind of ticked them off. And then I even got around the 5-month mark, we go down to do a diving trip. It's part of our workup. And we're there day one. We go through all these classes, and just being around the guys again for the first time in a couple years was just like, yes, man. I was just so happy to be there. And I'm like, I'm gonna do this dive. Like if I physically can't, I'll abort the dive, and it shouldn't have been an issue. But our corpsman saw me dressed out to dive and was like, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" And I'll try to keep it shorter, so we're racking up the time. But
Oh, dude,
basically,
you're good. Hey, there's no rush on this one, bud. It will go as long as we need to.
so he goes to my senior chief and is like, "Hey, he's not cleared to dive." And so he's like, "Okay, we'll call back and get him cleared. He clearly feels like he's good." And so he calls back and he talks to some random doctor at our medical. And the doctor isn't who has seen me. He's not the physical therapist. He goes over to physical therapy and pulls my file instead of talking to the physical therapist. And he looks at the file, and to him, when he looks at it, he says, "Oh, he hadn't showed up to any physical therapy, and this is 5 months in." So he was like, "I can't clear him." And I get my butt chewed like to no end. And I wrote this long statement about it, and that probably ticked some people off. But it's like I stand up. I stand up for stuff. Like I don't care if it's going to get me in trouble. I will speak my piece. And the issue was that I had already been through a shoulder surgery. I knew what to expect. I knew what exercises to do, and I went to them and said, "Hey, I just got to my team. I want to be there. I can't train, but I can at least help facilitate training. I had all the, the RSO quals and stuff like that, and I would help run ranges. I would be the Hearst master. I would be the dive supervisor, whatever it was. I'm like, I want to be there. And so they gave me the bands and a printout of the exercises for me to do. And I was doing them on my own. They didn't write this down, apparently, but so it looked like to this random doctor that I wasn't doing anything. And so I just got in trouble for that. Like, so they wrote me up for that. Um, um, Within a couple weeks, I was legit medically cleared. I was able to attend our 5 weeks of CQC, and then we go to Alaska to do cold weather training and to learn to ski. Because our next deployment was going to be to somewhere in the Arctic. And day 2 on skis, I tore my knee and I had to get sent home early. And yeah, man, uh, they sat me down when they got back from that, and they're like, "Look, you missed all of workup. You hit CQC, and then you're gonna miss all the rest. There's like you can't go on deployment. Like you didn't do these certain checks in the box that needed to get done. So you're not going to be able to go." And then they tell me like, "Hey, look, we're going to take you to this board as a formality, and we're going to get you moved to another team. You'll be able to heal up, j- uh, join up with the platoon, and then carry on like you were supposed to." And I'm like, "Damn, they're really looking out for me." I really thought the senior chief was taking care of me. And I show up to this board, and it was a Trident review board, which, for people that are listening, it means that they can take my title of being a SEAL from me and send me to the Navy or kick me out. Like they can do that. But so I was just blindsided. Like I didn't understand why I was there. I hadn't gotten any trouble. I hadn't done anything wrong. I was just injured. What the hell? So they berated me more than anything I'd ever experienced in my whole career. Talked to me like I was just the biggest piece of crap to ever show up to the teams. They gave it to me so bad that towards the end of it, I literally couldn't even tell them why I wanted to be a SEAL. I couldn't. Like I was blown away. Like I just so messed up. And so that concluded with them taking my Trident from me. And this was leading into Labor Day weekend. And so I spent the whole weekend like just looking things up, like how are they allowed to do this? I found a couple of cases where guys gave their Tridents up so they didn't have to go on deployment and were then able to go back and keep them. Like just weird stuff. But ultimately, I found the guidelines that the Navy put out, and there's a few things about it. Like I realized none of them were done for me. So one, the team slash C, the commanding officer, is supposed to give me a letter telling me that I'm going to an NEC review board, and it was supposed to be laid out in writing. That didn't happen. I was supposed to be given any evidence that the board members were going to see. That didn't happen. And there might have been another couple of things, but none of it was done. And so I wrote up this really professional thing for the CEO, and I go in there Tuesday morning to the master chief, and I knock on his door, and his door was open, and he's doing some paperwork or something. And he looks up and he sees me, and he's like, he sees that I have this piece of paper in my hand, and I was just like, Master Chief, I understand that the CEO is probably going to get my package today from the review board, and I want him to get this. And he takes it from me and tosses it aside and is like, "Why do you care now?" And just started giving me the business again. And then before I can even respond, he's like, "Get the fuck out of here. Go see the career counselor." And I go to the career counselor's office. His door's open. He's on speakerphone, and he motions for me to come in and sit down. And so I'm listening to the end of this conversation he's having, and it's with the corpsman detailer. And he's like, "Yeah, this guy," basically telling him that I just got kicked out of the teams and seeing if the corpsman rate will take me back. Otherwise, they'll have to kick me out of the Navy. And he was all happy, like, "Oh, yeah, senior E6, like, we'll send you to IDC sub school. We'll take care of you. You'll be able to pick up E7 in no time, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Wait a minute, pump the brakes." I'm appealing this decision. Like, I understand that they made their decision, but I was treated unfairly and I'm appealing this. Like, I'm not taking this as the answer. And so by the end of that day, I guess the CO had read this memo and they called me, the master chief called me back down and was like, slid my trident over and was like, "You can wear this for now. There are procedures that are supposed to be followed around here, and apparently we didn't follow them with you. You'll have another board in 2 weeks. You better be ready for this one." And then told me to get the F out. I was ready for that one. It was had to be a different board per Navy guidelines, except for the Master Chief. He was chairing the board, so he was back. But that one went completely different. There was one Master Chief in particular who I think him alone being on that board is what saved me. But I don't know what they talked about before I came in, but the only question he asked me, he goes, "What do you have going on in your life right now outside of work?" And I just broke down crying. Like I didn't even, wasn't even feeling those emotions going in there. It just happened. And I realized, like, man, my niece had just got a terminal diagnosis. My nephew, within a month of this, was in a horrific car crash, and they didn't know if he would walk again. But it was apparently affecting me. And I'm sure there was many other things built up and affecting me, and I just hadn't realized it. But coming to an all halt like this, brought it all up. But I broke down crying, and we they asked me different questions, but none of it was like the previous board. Like, they didn't care about work at all. They were like, "Who are you talking to, therapist wise? Are you getting some help? Like, you clearly need some help." And the eye opening thing was this Master Chief. He tells me, he's like, "I've been in the Navy for 30 years and I haven't been through as much as you have going on." And at that time, I was also going through a divorce again. And, there was just so much. And we don't realize, us men, we're so unbelievably stubborn and don't realize how much truly affects us and how much of it comes out, whether we want it to or not. And yeah, they were like, "We don't see enough evidence to take away your NEC." And he just said, "I really hope that you continue with therapy because you need it." And that was like, holy crap. Like, that was an eye opening thing to hear.
It's hard when you have another grown man being able to look you in the face and say, "You need this help." When they actually said to you, "You need this help," did you even know how to use therapy at this time? Or did you even know what therapy looked like?
Yeah, I was going through therapy, but it was like, and this talk therapy wasn't working for me. It just, they're just, some of them are just such zombies. And it's like, I get that you went through schooling and that you're a smart person, but being a smart person and being personable is so different. And I was never one of those people who thought like, "Oh, you've never been through what I've been through, so you can't possibly understand." Excuse me. I know that there's people like that, and I understand that mentality, but I wasn't like that. I really was trying. I was trying to talk about things. I was trying to hold back with other stuff, and I realize now, looking back, that it was just how uncomfortable I was with those people, and I went through different ones. And matter of fact, so right after this review board, like within a couple months, they all go on deployment. I had to stay back and help new guys that were checking in, that type of stuff. And I was just getting strong and healthy and back in shape. And at a certain point, it was like I woke up at my desk and was like, when did I get to work? Like I was in uniform. So I'm like, I don't know where I parked. I don't know what clothes I wore to change into uniform with. Like crap. That was weird. Then the third time this happens to me, I'm like, shit, I think I need to see a doctor. And so I go see I go see medical, and they were like, wait a minute. And then they started piecing together some of the other crap that I'd been in there for. And they asked me some questions about head trauma. And then they were like, okay, you're also a breacher. So we think you have TBIs. And they ended up sending me to a place called NICO, which is at Walter Reed Medical Center. And you're there for like 4 weeks. Is the most is the greatest I've ever been treated by medical personnel in my entire life. They were amazing. But it ended with I left that place with 12 diagnoses. Two of them were two different insomnia diagnoses. And they showed me the MRIs and pointed out the TBIs that I have. They're like, do you have four spots on your brain? Like these are scars from traumatic brain injury. They said it could have been built up over time, could have been one incident each time. They just don't know. But they knew that I had brain damage, and they're like, you can't operate ever again. And the last day you're there, they call back and they speak to your master chief or your top enlisted guy and your doctors, and they recommended medical retirement. And luckily, I had a different master chief at this time, and they're like, he said he's been in at this time. I was like hitting somewhere between 16 and 17 years. They're like, no, he can come over to headquarters. And we call it group, but they're like, he can come over to headquarters and finish out his time here. Like, we're not just going to do that to him. And so I got to actually retire, but that sucked too. That brought a whole bunch of other crap because then I'm put into ops, which I ended up dealing with all of the teams and people of certain ranks. So at a certain point, every single person who was on the board that tried to remove me from the teams came in there, and it's like you can feel it and you can see it on their face. Like, what the hell is this guy still doing here? And why does he have a trident on? So that was how I got to spend the last couple years I was in. But that was a different kind of moral injury where it was just like, man, the whole reason I came in was to do this job. And now it was just taken. Like it was a tough pill to swallow for a while. But ultimately I got over that by I'm glad I'm alive. Like I could have had severe brain damage, whatever did it. Excuse me. But it was like it was still tough. I was still dealing with all these issues. And during that time, I was introduced to a lady who works for, well, she worked for herself. However, um, NSW or the Navy SEAL Foundation, I think the SEAL Foundation pays her to do therapy for guys, active duty, retired, whatever. If they're an NSW, they're covered. And she's an art therapist. And she, I was open minded. I'm like, hey, I'm not an artist. Okay, I'll stick figure all day, but to draw pictures is not my jam. And I go in there day one, and I was just like, I'm here. Let's see what you got. Like, no other talk therapy has worked for me, and I don't draw. So, let's do this. And this was at this was her I was her last person of the evening. So it was like 5 or 6 PM, and instead of it being just this hour thing, I was there for like 3 hours, and she never tried to rush me out of there. She got and she I wasn't good, but she got me to draw something just in that first visit, and I was like, "What kind of sorcery is this that you were able to get me to draw something?" And I came in here with this attitude like, "Hey, look, I can't draw." She was amazing. She was the first person that I ever felt comfortable with, and she ended up hearing all my crap. I went to see her multiple days a week, and I would always be her last person, but I would be in there for hours. She didn't have to do that. She could have done the whole hour bit and then booted me out of there, but hours. I spent hours and weeks with her, and she was just amazing.
And you just talked about from childhood to being in the Navy, all this abandonment. Then all of a sudden you have this woman that's saying, "Hey, you're good enough to be around me. You're good enough to talk with me. You're more than welcome to actually sit with me." Like, talk about conflicting emotions of like your body failing on you.
Yeah.
You have gentlemen that are leadership that you might have respected up to this point. They're saying, "Dude, you gotta peace out." And then now you got this lady after you retire saying, "Hey, you know what? I got you, bud. You don't need to run."
Yeah, it was needed. I it was right at the first time in my life where matter of fact, how she got brought up was I was watching a movie, with the girl I was dating at the time, and, I'd already seen this movie, but at the end of the movie, the real people are talking, and I broke down crying, like, bawling, and that was the first time I really had cried in many years. Um, I never really got that opportunity, but I like 30 minutes straight just wailing, and it was like, "What is wrong with me?" And at the end of it, I realized, like, I don't wanna be alive. I don't wanna feel this pain, and that was tough to deal with and tell myself, like, "I don't wanna have to feel like this. I don't wanna be here." But I do wanna be alive, and I reached out to the same doctor and was like, "Hey, I wanna kill myself, like, I need help." And I was lucky that she took me serious, and she's like, "I have somebody you should talk to." And that was how the art therapist got brought up. And, and I'm not saying that, like, thoughts of suicide didn't go away. They hung around for a while, and ultimately, years later, I'm fast forward, I'm with a new person who is the most amazing woman I've just ever come across in my life, and I really don't deserve, but
So, Eric, before you jump away from the suicide, and I think this is an important conversation for people to even hear, is what did you want to what did you want to accomplish by completing suicide or having those thoughts?
I just didn't wanna be in pain. I didn't wanna be and with that internal agony that I honestly didn't know where it was even coming from. I hadn't I hadn't done enough work to even know what was going on. I just hurt so bad that it I didn't wanna feel that, and I thought you know what? This is the way to go. But it also, man, I didn't wanna die. I didn't ever attempt. I reached out for help, uh, and that was also tough.
Yeah, it's the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people, when they hear about, hey, I want to end my life or I want to complete suicide, they don't realize that there's this physical pain or there's this mental pain, that there's this tape that is playing. And I don't even know actually how to pause the tape. I don't even know. As soon as the tape goes on, it just fucking steamrolls ahead and there's like no pausing that train. If you're interested, we can still keep going, but I'm up to you, and otherwise we can get back at this another time. And
No, let's keep going, man. Let's bust it out.
so when you actually started working on your so now when you started talking to our therapist and you start to work on yourself, how did talk therapy change for you?
That I can't explain because it wasn't like just plain talk therapy. She had a way of doing her thing around art while getting things out. And one of them had to do with three of my friends that died. And she basically she got it. She got enough to come to the surface where I realized like three of my friends that died, like it was the biggest thing affecting me of everything I'd been through. And it was like they all died 3 years apart, but they died 21 September, 23 September, 25 September. And so at a certain point that week in September would just take me offline. And it just hurt too bad to even deal with that week. And the longer that went on, then there was the week before that because it was the anticipation for that week that sucked. And then it was September. And so at a certain point, it was like as soon as September hit, I would start falling apart and I would start drinking super heavy. And she ended up having me and I I wish I had been journaling during this time, so I couldn't really tell you, like, how she did this. It was sorcery.
So I want to jump in. So what men don't realize, we talk more when we are working side by side than when we're actually talking like this, face to face. When Because face to face like this is very primitive of, hey, we're about to get down and scrap if we need to. Even showing our teeth is actually not normal because it's usually meant to be just like if you give a head nod like this, you're actually giving respect, showing your throat. Your head down like this is actually trying to protect yourself. So doing the art therapy, like I done art therapy myself when I was in a residential, it's helping you use a different modality to be able to take what is trapped up here and make a vision. Sometimes we don't have the ability to articulate those words, but we're able to make it more abstract by making an image and using a different medium as far as like paint or charcoal or whatever.
That's interesting. That's It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. She was just so amazing that, like, man, I broke my foot, another injury. Broke my foot that was gonna require surgery, but the day I did, I still made it to my art therapy. She was like, "You don't have to come in hobbling on crutches. My foot's like this big." She was like, "You don't have to be here. Like, go home." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this is the best thing that has happened to me. Like, I need this." And the amount of time that she had given me, I felt like I needed to show up, and not
Mhm.
for her, but for me. Like, I needed it. And yeah, I was there.
So our therapy started to unlock some of this. Were you also doing a were you seeing by by any chance a prescriber at this point? Were you seeing a
Yeah.
talk therapist?
No, y
Um, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just curious if you've seen that, and then the other thing I wanted to get back to is the anniversaries is what people call it. It's a lot of times anniversaries has this positive context, but in the military we have anniversaries as these dates of reminder of pain. And the body remembers, the mind remembers these dates. The sound, the change in the weather, the temperature, the smells. It it brings us back to certain places. And if we have not learned how to extrapolate the emotion from these memories and make it more historical, it just makes it it makes it more harder to deal with because we walked away the first time from it, so the second time is a little bit easier, and then the third time and the fourth time, we start making it wider, so we don't even get close to it. We start avoiding it further and further out.
Yeah, completely. Oh my gosh, nailed that one. But, yeah, so back when I had the first thoughts of suicide and I called the doc and asked for help, that's when I got meds prescribed. Pardon me. So I started on mental health meds then, and then, I saw the art therapist and basically until I left, because as soon as I got out of the military, I was gone from Virginia. Uh, I went back to Texas as fast as I could. So then I lost the therapist, um, and I started this is when the transition I didn't think was gonna be bad for me. I wanted to go. I couldn't wait to get back to Texas, um, but I had left with 6 months of meds, and I thought, like, "Man, my stuff is cut and dry, like, the VA shouldn't take that long, right?" And, yeah, I was so wrong. Like, the VA was such an unhelpful, organization, and I didn't have that help I needed. So I ran out of meds, and instantly wanted to kill myself, and it was more from that change. There's, like, the thing that these meds do and causes you when you stop taking something instantly like that, I think is more why. But I went to the local VA clinic and I said, "Hey, VA hasn't finished my stuff yet." I was like, "But I ran out of meds. Like, I wanna kill myself. Like, I need some help. I need a refill." And they're like, "Sorry, there's nothing we can do for you." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you're just gonna throw me out like that?" And they did. And so I left there and I went straight to the ER, and they, hooked me up with meds, and, I eventually got my VA stuff, or at least partially worked out. I at least got meds at a certain point, and then I left Texas and came to Tennessee, pardon me, and then this new wonderful woman, she helped me realize that biggest thing that I was doing wrong was that I wasn't taking them at the same time every day and, consistently. And it was just how my mental health was affecting me. It's not that I didn't want to, you know? And then there were anyway, she got me on track. And even though I was on track, this all my stuff was coming back. And I got to a point where like I planned my suicide. And the thing that kept me from doing it was I thought I was sitting in my garage and I thought, "Oh my gosh, she is gonna come home and open the garage to walk in, and she is going to find me." And the thought of, like, what that would do to her was the only thing that kept me from going through with it, and obviously was enough, but it just broke my heart that I was like that. And right around this time, I've been watching a bunch of podcasts, and I hear these operators talking about psychedelic treatments, and not just that they're getting better. The thing that really got me was like they completely quit drinking. And I'm like, what seal quits drinking? Like this, there must be something to this because every event, everything we do is around booze, you know? And so I looked into it, and this Dr. Polanco, amazing human being, he runs an organization that you got to go down to Mexico, but I was accepted. Um, the SEAL Foundation paid for that treatment, if I'm not mistaken, but and it's not cheap, but it's worth it. And I go down there and I do Ibogaine for the first time, and it was rough, man. It was so rough. It really kicked my butt, and it was like you're talking puke sessions, not just an amount of times you're puking, but it's like because you're empty, your stomach's already empty. And once the puke comes, like, if you aren't doing the right things, like, just movement causes horrific vomiting. And it's like, I could tell it was just pulling stuff from every cell in my body. And I'm just coughing up stuff. I coughed up black stuff 3 times. Um, it was rough, so rough. And I ended up, after like an hour and a half of this, I pass out and I wake up and it was over with. And I'm like curled up in a ball, puke bowl right in front of my face, and just soaked with sweat. And I was just instantly deflated, thinking that I'd slept through it, and now I'm not gonna get any of the results. Like, man, I just wasted their money and I wasted my time and all this, and I was so wrong, so unbelievably wrong. And oh, and this stuff stays in your system for like 5 to 6 months. And I don't mean for those listening, it's not like in your system, like if you go do a piss test. First off, none of this stuff shows up on a urine test. That's not how it works, but it does stay in your system. And oh, and I'll back up on to one thing because one of the biggest benefits I got from it. So when I went to do Ibogaine, I was drinking every single day. Um, I was drinking or I was sleeping 2 to 4 hours a day max. I had these massive nightmares from, an anti-malaria drug I took in '04. And I mean, they're not just nightmares, it's physiological. So whatever I was going through, my brain and body really treated as if I'm going through this. So I dealt with that for all these years too. And it was like I can't explain it, but, like, I would feel like I fell down a flight of stairs, like, multiple days a week, just from how much my body worked throughout the night, and so I was just never getting rest. One of the sleep studies I got done before I left the military said my brain wakes up 17 times an hour, and I'm like, "Well, no wonder I'm so tired." But, anyway, so these nightmares from the first Ibogaine trip that I did took those nightmares away. Haven't had a nightmare since. And that was the first sense of peace that that I got. Man, it was so needed because I mean, we're talking 19 years straight of dealing with these physiological horrors. And um after about 5 months, uh anger and pain started coming back, and I ended up going and doing Ibogaine again. And this time I was ready for it. I didn't do any of the stuff I did the first time. Oh, and I also was part for the first time, I was part of a study with the University of Texas. So to do that study, I had to wean off of all my meds. which was awesome to wean off and not be on anything, but it's horrific for anyone who hadn't done it. It's everybody should do it. Um, Work with the doctor. Don't do it on your own. But it took me 3 months, and it was just a roller coaster of rage to sadness, and it was hard. But so then the second time I go down there, it's six months without meds, not just 3 months, or actually 9 months without meds. Um, and I didn't do any looking around or moving around. Like, this isn't a drug where you can go do things. Like, you're in your bed the entire time. Um, and even when I went to puke, I was methodical and rolling over onto my side. I didn't even take my eye mask off for it, and it didn't turn into a puke session. It was amazing. It lasted 15 hours, so it's rough. It's super rough. It's not one that I will recommend to hardly anyone. Psilocybin, I recommend that to everybody. Everybody should be figuring out how to do a psilocybin treatment. But ibogaine was really rough. Um, I got more amazing results from that one, and that really just catapulted me forward to a good place. And about 6 months after that, I go and do my first psilocybin treatment up in Minnesota, and I just realized, like, man, there's something to this. It it just changed me and continues to change me. I continue to do them. I just matter of fact, you're talking about Jared earlier. Jared runs the Rising Ridge, and that facility is just awesome. I just did his retreat like a little over a month ago. But man, I could go on for days about psilocybin and how it's just changed my life.
So when you were talking about the ibogaine, so the shirt that I'm wearing, I actually wore the shirt purposefully. So this guy CT, I met him doing some team red, white, and blue stuff, and he was a cadre. He worked in the Green Berets. Between being a Green Beret, he was a contractor. He spent about 9 tours overseas. And as you know, people like to drink, and like yourself, couldn't have quit drinking before he actually did the ibogaine. As soon as he did it, never went back to drinking again. Doesn't listen to the news, doesn't listen to hard music. Started up a cleaning company, cleaner, to play on words, it's a mesh type of perspective, and non-aluminum type of deodorant, really simple ingredients to all this stuff. And the way that he described it was because he did the, I think it was the 5 LEO toad after he did the ibogaine, which is like you kind of get blasted off, and then the other one is more the rotor rooter to it.
Yeah.
But and I was actually thinking about the Rising Ridge right before we got on. I would love to actually have him make a shirt with little mushrooms on it with a nice little rainbow as far as like something like magical. But the psilocybins, the ibogaine, it's a great way to be able to go into that dark place and be able to not have to be able to use the words, but understand the emotions behind stuff. And there's like a lot of theories about how the mushrooms show you what you already want to know and how to actually look at it and how it's so gentle.
Yeah, I took it serious, and I put the work in. A lot of us want the healing, and we don't want to do the work. But if people will just think about it like this, like, think about the work that we put in to get trashed, the work of staying up long hours and not getting any sleep. Like, all of these things is what got us to where we're at. The amount of hours that we spent in that darkness and focused on these negative things, but not processing them, that was a different type of work. But nobody wants to put in the work to process and heal and actually deal with those demons.
Mhm.
And I figured out the way that works for me, and that was with psilocybin treatments. And it's hard. It's hard. I've cried so much in the last year than I have my entire life. And it's just it's unbelievably worth it. You get your life back. You get to feel what peace feels like. You get to feel happiness. I was never happy in my life. And I got to reach, I had a dream and I got to go do it. And I was still never happy. I was never satisfied. And going and doing these treatments, like I just was able to get my life back. I had many profound experiences. Like plan on writing a book just about my experiences with that. I'm not going to go into details about my past and all that. Okay, maybe kind of outline why I needed it, you know. Um, not as much as we talked about here, but just to touch on them. And yeah, more people deserve happiness and peace, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to come on here.
Well, Eric, if you don't mind, would you like to share what is a message that you would like for the audience to hear?
Yeah, just what I was saying, man. Peace and happiness is there. There are plenty of people that want to help you achieve it. Reach out to me. I will do everything I can to help you. I will sit with you during a treatment. I will give you the information if you're not ready to do that. A lot of people aren't ready. A lot of people have reservations. I don't want to say scared, but reservations about doing this because we all grew up in the age of hearing that this stuff will melt our brains and it'll do this and that, and they're just fabricated lies. This stuff will heal, but it will take work. And if you put the work in, I promise you, like, you will find happiness on the other side. You will realize your faults. That it will do. It will show you the type of person that you've been and who you need to make up with. Um, it's led me back to God. It has shown me that despite what my children's mother has put me or other people or my kids through, I was able to forgive her. I've been able to forgive everybody. And I haven't reached out to certain people, but I've worked on repentance. I had to reach out to my kids and bite the bullet of like, I am so sorry I was not there for you. And repentance isn't saying you're sorry. It is legit repenting and apologizing for the things that you have done. You're not just sorry. This is why you're sorry. And no justifications, no excuses, no reasoning. You just own your shit. And that's been it's work all in itself. But it has brought me such happiness and I'm in the best place that I've ever been in. So
Eric, where can people find you or be able to reach out to you?
I'm on social media, Rebel Frogman with threes instead of E's. Send me a message. Um, I'm on I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Yeah,
Eric, I really appreciate you being able to share your story, dude. You've been through a lot, and on hopefully some of this parts of these stories will be able to resonate with individuals and help them agitate for that ability to change and realize that they're not alone.
appreciate that, man. I'm so grateful that you let me share. Sorry that it goes over your typical timeline, but unbelievably grateful, man.
Well, thank you, man. How do you feel it went?